Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rocha Revolution. I am honored to be sitting here today with my friend Alejandra. Alejandra, tell everybody your full name and where you work.
Hi, everybody. I'm Alejandra Teresa Vázquez Bauer. I use she, her, ella pronouns. I am the Director of Policy Advocacy and Partnerships at the Education Trust, and I'm based in Washington, D.C.
Tell folks who may be ignorant to the issue, they ain't ignorant, but they may not understand what the Ed Trust is. Tell them what that is.
Yeah, the Education Trust is a nonprofit organization committed to bold advocacy and policy solutions to ensure that all children have access to equitable education from preschool to college.
That seems like something really important. I thought the children was the future.
We children are the future. What do we have if our kids don't have every opportunity to become bright stars, right?
Alejandra, I would assume that you are from somewhere in the South, the Southwest. You don't strike me as a New York or New Jersey girl.
You're right. I'm from New Mexico. I had to adjust myself when I moved to New York City to keep up with the pace. But I'm originally from New Mexico. I'm from Santa Fe area and grew up, born and raised. Whole family's still there, and my family's originally from Mexico.
Awesome. Is that beautiful turquoise necklace from New Mexico?
Advocacy.
Awesome. Um, I got sent to New Mexico when I was a young man many, many, many moons ago to run a congressional race in Santa Fe.
Oh, in Santa Fe.
And Governor Bill Richardson, who was a congressman then,
Hmm.
had got appointed by Bill Clinton to be the energy secretary.
Yes.
And so there was a special election to fill his seat. This was many moons ago. This was over 25 years ago. And I was in East Texas working and got sent there. And I was just enamored by how beautiful all the aesthetics, the houses, the shopping centers, the all the stuff looks a lot alike. It's all very earth toned. It's all very cultural relevance. And there's a deep, deep culture there. I learned quickly around the Spanish and around the Spanish settlers back in the day. Folks are quick there to remind you that their family was part of the original land granters, right?
Yes.
I'm not messing that up, Em. Is that still like a thing?
It's true. It's very true. There are many families, people, my classmates I grew up with, whose families had been there for generations and generations from original Spanish settlers at the time. So
And so, were you born in Mexico or were you born in New Mexico?
I was born in Albuquerque. My family's originally from Jalisco, and our my grandparents came when they were young in their 20s. They came across the border to California, and they became farm workers. So they worked in the lemon and strawberry fields. They did manufacturing work for several years until they had kids. My mom, she was born in California, and much of my family's in California, New Mexico, or New Mexico. So we're kind of spread across the Southwest and into Mexico. I still have family in Mexico. I go there a lot to see them. We maintain those close relationships. And uh, as I was growing up, I had family members come from Mexico to come live with us, to stay with us, to get kind of like get their feet on the ground before they too sort of sought out their lives here in the United States. So I was really very, as people say, we're a mixed status family. Very sort of like rich immigrant community in northern New Mexico. And I think that, like you said, I mean, New Mexico already is very Hispanic, Latino, Latina, um, with a long history of supporting immigrants across the whole state. And so it was a really great place to grow up because a lot of families were like mine, where they had family members coming from El Salvador or from Mexico or somewhere else to live with them. A lot of people speak Spanish. I think the culture is really celebrated. And so I was really familiar and used to that growing up. And I think it's really sort of try to carry that with me everywhere I go. Very communal, very family oriented.
It's such a unique story, but it's not. There's a lot of folks who've been on this Substack show that talk about this amazing journey of their family. And I ask that question so people can hear about these unique journeys that are all unique but beautifully woven together to create this fabric of America. My family was from Guanajuato, Mexico,
Mm,
and
mm,
my grandfather came across started, instead of working in the farms, doing work on the railroad. The railroad was being built across Texas. He was one of those laborers, and, like, all of our families have been such an integral part of the story of America that sometimes we forget, not me and you, but others that are, especially in a time where there's so much hate around brown people and ICE raids and the things that are going on, to where they forget all of the culture and the things that we brought to this country. Tell me, before we get into the Ed Trust, about your journey in New Mexico. Like, you go to high school there. Where did you end up going to college, and what got you involved in public policy?
Yeah, great question. So I went to high school in Santa Fe, had not really left New Mexico or Mexico or California really my whole life aside from family visits. And I was really privileged to get a full ride scholarship to a college in California, that gave me the opportunity to leave the state without having to pay money. And so I felt really blessed to fly out, become a Cali girl, as I used to say. And did my undergraduate at a small private school in California. Um, Through that, when I arrived to college, I was a the school you can look up is a predominantly white institution, and it is of one of the top schools to have the largest proportion of students from the top 1% in the whole US. And so I came into this school, um, really for the first time having to face what real money looks like, and sitting next to that as a low income Latina from New Mexico, coming in on as a full scholarship student. And I felt really behind, even in my classes, as someone who was, pretty advanced in my high school, among the top students in the school. I felt like I was completely unprepared in a lot of my classes in college, and um, immediately that had me thinking, well, this first, why am I here? I They must have admitted me by mistake. Um, and so I was really lucky to build community with other Black and Latino students on campus and get some resources, get some support and mentorship that helped me get through the first year specifically. And after that, I started to sort of build some confidence. I started the Latino community organization at my school. We did not have one.
Wow.
Latino students at the school sort of hung out casually, but there was no formal org or specifically supported by the school. So we started Mi Gente, it was called. We started doing engaging organizing, and we started a mentorship program through that. And that's really how I started to think about mentorship and building up the my younger peers as a mentor. And that led me to thinking about what my career could look like in education. I was already really invested. I was studying Latin American studies and history because our curriculum in New Mexico didn't really teach me my own history, and I wanted to learn that in college. And so I studied that, and I felt really invested in making sure that other young people could learn their own histories and could have all the opportunities available to them that maybe were not available to us. And that again led me to wanting to do education, being interested in immigration, being interested in supporting low income Black and Latina students in reaching those goals.
That's awesome. And then the org that you're working for now, talk to us a little bit about, like, the work that you focus in on every day. Talk about the overall organization, like, and then we can talk about your specific work.
Yeah. So, Ed Trust, I will just put out there that I was a high school teacher. So after college, I went into teaching high school, and even when I was a high school teacher at the time, I felt like I was already an advocate. I was already interested in how decisions in Washington were impacting my classroom. So what were the conversations in Washington? What were policymakers doing and thinking about and saying? And how was that trickling down into the classroom of 38 students sitting in front of me, bright-eyed, trying to learn math. I was a math teacher in high school. And so I got invested in looking into organizations that published research or was doing that kind of work, and I had discovered EdTrust at that time, 2017, from South Florida, in a classroom in South Florida, looking up some of the research that they were doing. And EdTrust has, for a long time, been an organization that publishes research on education equity issues, specifically around historically underserved student populations. has done advocacy at the Hill, and has also opened various state offices to support that work. So there's an Ed Trust in Texas. There's an Ed Trust called Ed Trust West, based in California, Ed Trust New York, Ed Trust Tennessee, and several sort of smaller teams in other states that help to develop and build that work, not from Washington down, but from the ground up in those states. Because as you and I know, coming from states that are not New York or DC, that work has to be sort of led on the ground from our own communities in order for it to really reflect the students and the population. So, yeah, that is Ed Trust, and I'm really grateful to be here because my vision leaving the classroom as a teacher in a Title I school in South Florida, um, was to ensure that schools had all the tools to give to students so that they can succeed. And I was surprised as a teacher that in Miami-Dade County, Florida, the third largest school district in the country, in a place where there's so many speakers of other languages and so many resources for the immigrant community, I thought that our immigrant students were left behind and they were sort of pushed to the back of the classroom when they were newly arriving. And I was disappointed. And I was an advocate then, going to school board hearings, and that led to a career in doing advocacy on behalf of and with immigrant families, like the ones that I came from, to go to school board hearings, to go to the Hill and talk about what immigrant students need, what value they bring, and why it's important to put more resources to ensure that they can succeed.
Oh, that's really a good story, and I think that it's a really amazing work that's being done. Is there an Ed Trust in DC?
Yes, we're at Trust National, and that's the office I'm in.
And is there a local that works with the local schools here?
I understand that Trust National actually partners a lot with the schools and the community in the
I just
DC.
remember seeing their name somewhere
Mhm.
when my wife ran for city council. Yeah,
Yeah,
we live in one of the poor wards in DC, and so public education was a big deal and the amount of schools, and they're trying to close schools, like, I think I remember coming across some of those folks.
yeah, and I know Trust folks here in the national office are involved in a lot of local things and supporting the DC public schools and very like the school programs around in Maryland and Virginia as well. So I'm sure you saw folks. They're involved.
So, have you seen I was thinking about these schools these days and about the current situation we're living in with this administration, and with you being this badass Latina, me being this Mexican redneck from East Texas. Uh, the way that ICE has come into our communities and really terrorized lots of parents and kids. Are you seeing that bubble up in your org and in the community as you hear back from local folks that are working on policy?
Oh, it's a top priority. So I have long been building a community called the National Newcomer Network with educators and researchers and advocates across the country who are committed to supporting this population. And so for them, this has always been a priority, whether it was in the news or not. Um, and we've been doing that work for 4 years, and that is the work that I've brought to EdTrust to house here now and to build out with the incredible resources and support of this large, well-known organization. But there's also I've in other spaces that have nothing to do without a specific focus on immigration, it has come up. Educators have said, "Fewer of my students are showing up." We're seeing high rates of absenteeism among immigrant origin students, English learner students who are learning English, many of whom are born in the US but might have an immigrant parent. That there's bullying spiking toward immigrant origin students. So there's and then specifically when cities like Charlotte or Chicago or New York or Los Angeles are experiencing raids, attendance will go down significantly. In some places, 40% of students don't show up, like in Charlotte the day after the raid there. And so we're seeing that it is even in places where newcomer programs were not a huge focus or didn't exist, or where talking about immigration was not a top priority, those places are now having to think about how are we supporting our immigrant students? What are we doing? How are we communicating with families? What protocols do we need in place? Because they realize that students cannot learn if they do not feel safe. Families are need a lot more support from the school system in order to feel like they can send their child safely to go learn. Again, think about being a child. When you're learning a concept like I was an algebra teacher, so my example is exponential growth in algebra. That's a hard topic, right? You have to be focused. You learn best. Research shows you learn best when you have a good breakfast, when all your basic needs are met, and then you can come in and start to understand these complex topics. Kids can't do that when they don't feel like when they haven't had a breakfast, when they haven't don't have a consistent place to sleep, or when they don't feel like they can come or much less return home safely to their family intact. That's what this moment is doing for families. That's what this moment is doing for students in schools. It's creating a sense of fear where students need to feel supported so that they can learn.
It's so, I don't wanna say triggering, but it's so interesting that, I've talked about this on the internet with Twitter and other folks of I'm a senior Democratic consultant. I get to run lots of campaigns. I get to be on TV and act all fancy. Uh, but I'm one of the last working class folks that are senior strategists for the Democratic Party. And it makes me think about those little cups of cereal that I would get when I would go to school in the morning because my mama was just 16 when I was born. My daddy left early, so we didn't have much money. So we were on lunch and breakfast assistance. And I had this little paper card, and the lunch lady would actually punch holes in it. But I remember how much I looked forward to breakfast and having, and back then it was just like one of them little things of cereal that you'd pull the top off of and put milk in.
Yeah.
And that was the cereal, and it was great. And I got to have breakfast, and then we got to have lunch, and we looked forward to pizza day on Friday, and like the little things as stupid kids. You forget about what that means to a child, and it's great that you have an organization like yours and folks that are in community working on what's the best learning atmosphere for a child, right? Like, I
Right.
think everybody learns at a different pace, but if you don't have the support of the food, it's really hard, right?
Right. Well, I mean, and schools symbolize stability for so many families, regardless of their background, regardless of what they have or don't have. Schools provide opportunity for every child, try to meet them where they are and ensure that they can learn, grow, succeed, play, be children, meet normal developmental moments, right? And I think what we're seeing at this moment is immigration enforcement is changing that for schools and not just for immigrant students, not just for undocumented students or kids in immigrant families, but for their classmates. Think about the child that goes home to their parent and they say, "Mom, my best friend didn't come to school today." What is that child thinking about who belongs in school? It makes them feel like perhaps they feel unsafe. Well, if this happened to my friend, is this going to happen to me? Think about the kids who live in neighborhoods where there are raids and maybe their family is not from outside the United States. Maybe they have protected status of some sort. But they might also feel afraid when immigration enforcement is happening around them, and so attendance doesn't the attendance drops are not necessarily just happening among undocumented students, they're happening, across large swaths of student populations. And so this work, again, impacts not just immigrant children, not just immigrant families, though that's who we're talking about here, but it has a much broader impact on school communities. And school leaders have to be mindful of that, that when some students feel unsafe, all students will feel unsafe. And they have to improve their communication and resources and outreach in order to sort of fill that gap so that so the learning environment is improved so that they can learn.
You've seen a lot of changes probably from the time you were in school and then you taught school, and now you're advocating for these policies that help children in school.
Mhm.
What are some of the ways that you've seen policy or the school or the curriculum or the teachers, like, just change. When I say it out loud, the first thing that I think of is AI and cell phones. Like, there were no cell phones in school when I was there. I don't know when you were there if there were, and now you can put something into Chat GPT and get something spit out and looks like your homework. Like,
Yeah.
other than that, like, what are the changes you've been seeing that are good or bad?
I mean, I'll say that that's even changed since I was teaching. The sort of access to AI that's changed significantly, especially since I was young, but more so even since I was teaching. The other thing I think of is the way that teaching aims to center students more. I think when
Mhm.
I grew up, sort of a more traditional instruction style that is very teacher at the front, students in rows taking notes, no sort of engagement of students, no engagement of student learning or trying to critical thinking in the classroom. And that has changed a lot. There's been significant research and work that's put out to on how to allow students to meet that, meet the the theory or understanding on their own. And I as a former teacher, learning that was hard because I hadn't that was not what I was used to being in the classroom in my educational experience, but it is what allows students actually to really not just memorize facts, but understand the whole process of, really engage in the whole learning process and discover things for themselves. It makes better workers, it makes better neighbors to be critical thinkers, and so I think there's been a lot of work done there. And so that was honestly the first thing because I when I think of education, I really just think of like the student-centered piece, right? What is the student's experience in the day-to-day? They come in, they have their own lives outside, maybe they support siblings or s they do sports or, um they come in, they learn, they go to lunch, they're with their friends. We want schools that allow children to have the full experience of being a child, that they can go to recess, they can explore, um, sports or other opportunities, theater, voice, those types of things in school, that they can be exposed to the whole like plethora of what life can look like for them. Um, and so that's why these things around like immigration enforcement are so damaging because they prevent children from being children. We want schools that feel safe, for learning and not places of fear, not places where students are stressed, thinking about anything else but being a kid, turning in their homework, learning, and going home to a loving family. So that's what we're trying to work towards.
In the realm of public policy and you advocating for these children, you say you start there when you center the conversation. Can you name a policy that you're trying to get passed or done or one you're trying to get rid of?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the top things that comes to mind when it comes to thinking about immigrant kids is ensuring the schools have the resources that they need to get students everything that they need to succeed. So I care a lot about making sure, and so does our organization, making sure that schools are equitably funded to meet all the needs of every student, meet them where they're at, um, and get the resources, both instructional and otherwise, to understand content and to succeed. So that's one thing. We care a lot about ensuring also, again, that students' protection, civil rights protections are upheld um, across the country in states like Tennessee, potentially in Texas, and in other places. There are laws being introduced to prevent undocumented students from attending education. That is not only problematic for the immigrant population, but again, it should raise flags for everybody else who cares about education or who cares about democracy because when we limit some students from access to education, it opens the door to limiting that access for many other groups of students. Education is a public good. And so we have to protect that for all kids, including undocumented students. And so we're really paying attention to those efforts in places, um, trying to defend Plyler v. Doe, the Supreme Court decision that established a right to free public education regardless of status, originally from Texas, actually,
Yep.
and advance laws in different states to ensure that not only is Plyler upheld at the state level, but that many other protections are in place.
Um, Tell folks who are listening who may wanna help, where can they find more information about the org or support in some way?
Mhm. Of course, you can find more information about EdTrust at edtrust.org. You can look up my name on there and you'll find me. I'm happy to be a support there and offer support. You can learn more about the National Newcomer Network by reaching out to us there on the EdTrust website. Reach out to the team and they'll connect you to me. If you're interested in joining our growing coalition, I'll add you to our list and you can join our efforts to advocate across the country for equitable schools for newcomers. And yeah.
Good. The last 2 questions are easy softball questions as we lead into the last 5 minutes of this 30-minute interview. Is the first one is both of these are cultural, kinda, and the first one's about food.
Oh,
And First thing I learned when I went to New Mexico as this kid who had never been to New Mexico is when I showed up at a restaurant, I told them, "Where's the salsa?" I was looking for salsa to go with my tortillas and with my enchiladas and all of the things, and they kept asking me, "Red or green?" And I was like, "Red or green what?" I'm like, "I need some salsa."
But you
And
know the
they
same question, right?
right. So they were wanting to know if I wanted red chili or green chili, right?
Mhm,
Because that's the sauce they put on lots of things out there.
mhm.
With that being said, what's the one meal that you miss the most or that was your favorite growing up in New Mexico? It could have been your grandmother, it could have been your mother, could have been a restaurant down the street, but I need to know what it was.
Hmm. So, again, I'm my family's Mexican, and Mexican food is different from New Mexican food. If you're
Yes.
asking me what my favorite New Mexican dishes, like, from the state, I love, blue corn chicken enchiladas Christmas style, so the red and the green chile with queso on top. That's New Mexico style. But if you're asking me, like, family foods, Mexican foods that I miss,
Yes.
what I go home and I ask for every time, my abuelita passed a year ago, but the thing I asked her every year for my birthday was chiles en nogada.
Tell the folks who may not understand what that is. What is that?
Okay, so chiles en nogada, it's a poblano chile, they're the big
So
chiles.
she's talking about a pepper for all you white people. Poblano pepper. What is you finna put in it?
Poblano pepper, it's roasted, the skin is taken off, and then it's filled with, like ground beef, a bunch of veggies, raisins, all sorts of things. Everybody makes the picadillo, the inside, a little different, and then there's a crema, like a sauce that's poured on top made of walnuts, I believe,
Mhm.
um, ground walnuts. It's a traditional dish in the central part of Mexico around where my family's from, and then, granada seeds on top. Help me, what's a granada in English?
Yeah, like cheese and like and the spices. So the
Yeah,
sec
yeah.
that is amazing, that makes me so hungry already.
Pomegranate,
Pomegranate,
that's
yeah,
what
that's what I mean by spices, but seeds, but yes. The last question and for the boys, and it can be the same for the girls, I asked them, "If you were walking up to bat, what would be your walk-up song?" But your walk-up song could also be, what is your pump-up song? It could also be your workout song, but it's kind of the song you play to get you going, whatever get you going means to you.
Mm. So right now, I mean, that might change by the day, right? Right now, I love a lot of reggaeton. I grew up listening to mostly Latin music. I still listen to a lot of reggaeton and Latin music. So right now, Carol G is one of my top artists. So I would say Se Jodioto by Carol G is my top song. That's my pump up song before when I need to feel a little confident.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for being on and give everybody the, website again.
Yes, the website is edtrust.org. You can find me on there, and I'll share more information about the National Newcomer Network and the work we're doing.
Thank you, Alejandra. Go there, go to the website, support this organization. The work that they're doing is some of the most important work in the country, and until next time, y'all be good. Thank you, Alejandra.
Thanks, Chuck. Adios.
Bye-bye.